Welcome to Worthwhile Watches. I'm Rob. This is San Martin's new model SN0144, which takes its inspiration from Jian Zhan porcelain, like this teacup. This other teacup, also shown in the intro, doesn't actually feature this technique, but it has another trick up its sleeve. The music featured in the intro was based on an old Asian folk song, and the melody was actually played on this cup. But anyway, back to San Martin. This year, San Martin has been releasing some really great watches that are on a new level of quality, while also being more original in design. This model, the SN0129, has had several different variations, including a GMT version and this three-hand version with red desert textured dial. I plan to do a separate review of the red one soon, along with 3 separate showcase videos featuring my entire collection of San Martin watches. If you're interested in that, please subscribe so you don't miss it. And real quick, speaking of subscribers, I noticed that only about 7% of my channel's views are from subscribers. If my total viewers were 1 hour on a watch, my subscribers represent only a little over 4 minutes. So, if you're enjoying these videos, please consider subscribing. I've been putting a lot of work into trying to improve my videography, and I'd also like to start getting even more interesting things in to show you more regularly, like new releases, prototypes, and review units, but I need to grow the subscriber count to make that happen. So, thank you in advance. Now, back to the review. The SN0129 is a fantastic watch, but San Martin has raised the bar again with this SN0144. This model does have a similar handset and indices to the SN0129, but with some big improvements in the case, bracelet, clasp, and movement, not to mention that amazing new dial pattern. This watch comes in San Martin's cylindrical green zip-up case, along with a user manual, 2-year warranty card, and a screwdriver and bracelet tool. The movement in this watch is the Japanese Miyota 9015, rather than the Seiko NH35 found in most previous San Martin watches, including the SN0129. The Miyota 9015 is a 28,800 vibration per hour movement with hacking, hand winding, and a date function. This movement gives the SN0144 a smoother 8 tick per second sweep of the second hand, rather than the 6 tick per second NH35. The Miyota 9015 is usually a very reliable movement, and this one happens to be running amazingly well, gaining only 1 or 2 seconds per day. Sometimes you can hear the rotor freely spinning in there, but it's actually not too bad in this watch. That slim Miyota movement allows for the use of this slim case, resulting in a thickness of just over 10 millimeters, including the crystal. This makes for a slim, comfortable watch on the wrist that wears like a premium watch. It doesn't have that problem that many NH35 watches have, where they wear thicker and tubbier than they could. The case back does protrude a little bit underneath the case, but not enough to keep it from nestling right down on the wrist and wearing flat. It's a real premium wearing experience. The 316L stainless steel case measures 39 millimeters with a lug-to-lug of just under 46 millimeters. However, the male end links extend that measurement to just over 50 millimeters. The bracelet does drop straight down, and the case has a bit of downward curvature to it, so it should still be wearable for many wrists. Another thing to note is that this watch is now available in 42mm and 36mm cases, so all wrist sizes should be able to get a perfectly fitting version of this watch. This 39mm version weighs just over 136 grams with all supplied links, and sized for me with 2 links removed, it's just over 130 grams. The case back is not sterile this time, but displays some watch information in a polished ring surrounding a set of Chinese letters, which I'm told says Made by San Martin. This marking is supposed to emulate the stamps found on the bottom of Chinese Jian Zhan porcelain. This is a nice touch, and I'm glad to see San Martin creating their own identity in the watch world. The case features a lot of brushing on the top, sides, and bottom of the case. The brushing is fine and gives a satiny appearance. It's very well done. The bezel features circular brushing on the top and brushing on the sides, with a polished bevel all the way around. The case also has high polished bevels on the top and bottom of the case. The finishing is extremely clean and precise. The brushing gives the case a satiny sheen that's not overly blingy, with just enough pops of shine from the polished edges to make it sparkle without being gaudy. The screw-down crown is also nicely machined and features a glossy San Martin logo. The crown is about 6.5 millimeters in diameter and protrudes just enough to get a good solid grip. Mine is smooth with good thread engagement, and setting and winding the watch is smooth and responsive. The screw-down crown and case back allow for a water resistance rating of 100 meters, which should be adequate for this type of watch. The excellent finishing of the case also extends into the bracelet. This is a new style of bracelet for San Martin, with slightly raised center links with polished beveled edges. The outer links also have a polished bevel. The top, sides, and bottom of each link feature the same fine satiny brushing as the case. The links are very solidly interlinked and don't have much articulation, but the bracelet drapes nicely on the wrist and is comfortable to wear, with no problematic sharp edges, although the bottom edges of the links are quite crisp, but I wouldn't say sharp. The bracelet is 20 millimeters at the lugs and tapers to 16 millimeters at the clasp, which is 18 millimeters wide. This new clasp features a San Martin logo and a raised center section that continues the look of the raised center links. The all-milled clasp is secured with a double push-button mechanism. One thing I've come to really appreciate about San Martin is their use of toolless adjustable clasps, and this one is even better than their other recent releases. It features a gliding and locking mechanism with about 1 centimeter of travel. The bracelet links are about 8 millimeters each, so getting the perfect fit should be no problem with this watch. I do have one complaint about the bracelet, but I'll get into that later. Of course, the main event when it comes to this watch is the dial. But we're not there quite yet, because covering the dial is a piece of flat sapphire crystal with anti-reflective coating. This crystal is nice and clear, and I have no complaints about it. So let's finally get on with it and get to the dial. Yes, this dial is quite amazing. San Martin used a low-temperature enamel process to simulate the look of Jian Zhan porcelain. The effect radiates out from the center, and the blue fades not to black, but to a dark greenish color along the edges of the dial. This dial is also offered in orange and red colors, but I chose the blue because it looked like the pattern was the most clearly visible on the blue ones, and it's a really interesting shade of blue, and is unlike anything in my collection at the moment. The dial pattern has a bit of a 3D texture to it that changes with the direction of the light. The pattern is quite subtle in most lighting, but has some pop and shimmer in the right light. It is a fascinating dial, and does a good job of evoking the Jian Zhan effect. Or it's like the eye of an exotic animal. Or a nebula. The rather simple handset and indices complement the dial and add depth and sparkle without detracting from the dial pattern itself. The hands and markers are all precisely cut and placed. Without magnification, I can't see any flaws on the dial anywhere. And it also holds up very well under the macro lens. The San Martin logo under 12 o'clock is sized and positioned just right, in my opinion, and the 2 lines of text above the 6 o'clock framed date window complete this nicely balanced and symmetrical dial. The date wheel is color matched, and the second hand has a little pop of red at the tip, adding just a touch of spice to the cool blue and silver tones of this watch. The hands and indices are filled with BGW X1 lume. In my experience, X1 has been a very good performer, so let's see how this San Martin does in a 20-minute lume test. The lume starts off strong, glowing a nice icy blue. After 20 minutes, the hands and indices are still glowing evenly. I'd say the lume performance is very good. So what's not to like about this watch? The main problem I've had involves the bracelet, and specifically the screw pins. I've adjusted countless screw pins at this point, and rarely encounter much of a problem. But right away I noticed the screws seemed unusually tight as they backed out. I removed 2 links to get the proper fit, and I carefully screwed the pin back into the link, gently turning it backwards until it properly slotted into the threads. I was being very careful not to cross-thread anything or go too fast, but as I went, the screw was getting tighter and tighter. At about 3/4 of the way in, I considered whether I should remove the screw, but I really thought I could get it in the rest of the way. With just a couple turns left, it was super tight, and I could tell the screw head was starting to strip, but there was no going back at this point. So I powered on as best I could. The screw is now pretty much flush with the bracelet, but the chewed up screw head protrudes a little bit and is still a little sharp. The supplied screwdriver was also mangled beyond use. I did manage to tighten it just enough that it doesn't cause any problems while wearing, but it is a bit of a shame, and I'm pretty sure this screw is stuck there permanently. Hopefully this is just a problem with my particular bracelet. But aside from that issue, I have little to complain about. San Martin is really setting the bar high and reaching amazing levels of fit and finish and refinement for very reasonable prices that put many well-established brands to shame. In fact, my growing San Martin collection has been making certain purchases difficult to justify and making me question the whole concept of value and worth as it applies to watches. But that's a discussion for another time. What do you think of San Martin's recent releases? Now that they're creating more original designs, are they raising the bar for the rest of the watch world? I hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel and help to bump up that 7% figure and help the channel continue to grow and improve. Thanks as always for watching, and no matter what you have on your wrist, no matter the dial pattern, make your day worthwhile.